Okay.
All right, the meeting recording has started.
Okay, who's on? Who do we have?
So we have John Halleck,
Yep.
Michelle Bond, Luke Fassard, Robert Burke, Ray Fay, David Lorman, and let me see if Kevin Munson is here. I don't see Kevin Munson yet.
Okay, he's fashionably late, but we do have enough for a quorum, so we'll go ahead and get started here. I'd like to call the February 4th meeting of the Airport Commission to order. First line of business is Mark, the posting and the notice.
Yep, as usual, it's posted on our bulletin board here at City Hall, which is not seeing too much activity these days. So fortunately, we also post it online, as always, on our city website, and we distributed it through our listserv. And Rich Morey always does a good job posting it at the airport.
Yep, which didn't see much business in the last day either, so.
Okay, all right, thank you, gentlemen. The next section is public comment. And so we will take public comment for 3 minutes. You can't hand your 3 minutes off to anybody else. You have your own 3 minutes. And preferably it would be comments related to one of the agenda items, because the purpose of public comment is for us to internalize your thoughts as we go through and we vote on some of the various items. So with that, I'm going to mute my phone here. Anyway, and with that, Mark, I'll let you go ahead and start. So folks, put your hand up and Mark will call on you.
Okay, we have, I know that Dave said he wanted to speak earlier. He hasn't put his hand up yet. Dave Arndt, are you wanting to speak?
Hi, gentlemen and ladies. It's Dave and Susan, 4714 Capitol View Road. Residents of the city of Middleton. Particularly interested in your discussion tonight on item 2, since that involves some of our property, the obstructions, and we have concerns on how that's going to be handled, and very interested in what develops in the discussion here tonight. So I really don't have a lot more to say. Just with that, do you have anything to add, Susan?
No, we just want to be sure that whoever is working on trimming the trees, that they know what they should be trimming and not trimming, or how they could trim them in ways that would work for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. I'm sure we're going to make sure we have a certified arborist that knows how to do the right kinds of things. So Mark, next.
Next, I saw someone named Guest.
Yes, thank you, Mark. This is Cynthia Richardson, the town board chair for Town of Middleton. I request that before the city takes any action regarding trees on the Arndt property under an navigation easement, that the city confirm through a current survey that such trees are in fact above the level in the navigation easement, that the city consult at its expense with a certified arborist and obtain a report and recommendation from the arborist, and that the city consult with the Arndts and their tree expert on the action to be taken. And on another agenda item, the aircraft noise reporting form, I just have a couple of suggestions. First of all, I don't know, maybe this is an FAA thing, but where would someone report safety concerns? Because this seems to be completely focused on noise, and yet there's no decibel level box to fill in the decibel level if you should have such information. I also caution you to get into too much minutia description of aircraft. Most people don't know what a cargo plane is or an air carrier. I think having an airplane versus a helicopter is probably sufficient. And I'm wondering if you've been able to eliminate the pre-registration password requirement on the city website. So I hope that you would take those into consideration, and as well as the attach a photo. I would think that a screenshot from something such as Flight Radar 24 would be helpful as well. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Cynthia. Mark?
Next, we have Kasha.
Hi. Yes, so my name is Kasha Shah, and my family lives in Middleton in a house that's adjacent to the designated flight plan. So I've never contributed to one of these forums, but I wanted to briefly offer my comments to the committee regarding the proposed noise complaint form that's been included in this evening's supporting documents. I was surprised to see the level of detail requested on the form, and I think it places an undue burden of proof on those negatively impacted by the noise, disproportionate to any sort of response that results from these complaints. On occasions that our house has been impacted by noisy, low flying or touch and go flights, we don't typically know the plane is coming until it's already passed over our house, thus the noise complaint. And at that point, my husband and I might try to run outside and see the plane, but obviously we're always too late to be able to record the tail number, the wing configuration, and other sorts of details requested on the form. In fact, we've never been fast enough to even grab our phone to take a picture, which is also requested. The only thing we've ever been able to do to figure out details is to look at a web-based flight radar, which most people don't even know exists. And it's only effective when flights have their tracker on. And at this point, it's not all of them do. This 2-page form with the level of detail it's asking for looks like it was designed to discourage people from making noise complaints, given the level of details that are requested. And I don't think that all the levels are actually needed. Somebody should be able to report the noise event online with their address, time, and date, and that should be enough information for someone else to figure out from flight records which flight was responsible. Incidentally, I would hope that the city employee who records these responses is in no way personally, financially benefiting from the airport. Otherwise, I'd be worried about accountability. I also believe that whoever is collecting the information should not be in a position to provide addresses to anyone associated with the airport, because I think there's suspicion at this point among those who neighbor the airport that there is retaliation with touch and go flights over houses who make noise complaints. So I strongly urge the committee to adopt a form that's easier for the public to use so that it serves its purpose efficiently and fairly, and that the committee adopt a reasonable process of accountability that doesn't put those profiting off of the noise in charge of handling complaints. And if there's any amount of paperwork being done, I would suggest that it be on the back end of those noise complaints and not putting the burden of proof on those impacted by the noise. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Kasia, for your comments. Mark?
Jenny Pavlovich. Jenny P, sorry.
I'm here. Sorry, I thought you were going to unmute me, but I had to unmute myself. I just have a question about something that came up. I know it was discussed at the last AMPAC meeting a little bit, and I know Mr. Morey gave a little bit of an explanation, but with the question of implementing a right turn for both runways, either taking off to the west in particular or taking off, I think, to the north, what consideration could be given to making the pattern mainly go over less populated areas, which would be helpful for air quality as well as noise. I don't know if that's an airport commission discussion or an AMPAC discussion or a planning discussion. And I know Mr. Morey has explained some of it before, but some of us don't fully understand, you know, the different considerations for flying and, you know, for taking off in particular versus impacts on the neighborhood. And I'm asking that somehow that could be addressed, whether it's in this meeting or whether you could explain at some point where the best forum is for that. Am I allowed to take less than 3 minutes this time?
Yes, you can.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jenny. Appreciate it. Mark, back to you.
I don't see anybody with hands up. Is there anybody else who wishes to address the Airport Commission at this time?
Yes, I do. This is Bob Bartholomew.
Go ahead, Bob.
I would like to add an item to the summary that's going to be presented concerning the last AMPAC meeting. It was discussed, but it's not included in the summary. The item that should be included in Chapter 4, entitled Environmental Settings, did not include air pollution, which of course is a major factor in our environment, particularly much of the pollution does come from aircraft, particularly near the airport. The omission of discussion of air quality is the most surprising oversight from the list provided by Middleton. Air quality seems particularly relevant since, according to the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, that at the Maury Airport, I'm sorry, I misspoke there. Lead aviation coming from aviation gasoline accounts for about half of current lead emissions into the air in Dane County. 90% of the air pollution are from aircraft. As AC 150/5076-6B, that's from the FAA, states noise levels and water quality and air quality are the most common environmental concerns. Given these facts, in addition to other fossil fuels that are burned by aircraft engines, it's surprising that the topic of air quality has not been included as an environmental problem. In addition to the 90% lead emissions in Dane County, DNR staff has stated that the most significant pollutants at the Maury Airport is lead. Only one site in Dane County, Regional Airport, has more lead emissions than Maury Airport. General Mitchell, in fact, has 34% less than Maury's. I also includes with the packet for that meeting aviation fuel data and studies, aviation fuel data from what is provided at Maury's. Also, studies concerning the effect of lead on children. There are numerous schools near the Middleton Airport, daycare centers, and so forth. The only explanation provided by Mead and Hunt is that they were following the BOA format. I attempted to get an answer to that question from BOA a couple of weeks ago. Still haven't heard. But on the other hand, I asked them a question back in the last December, so I haven't heard. So maybe my expectations are too high. And, I do think that the air pollution is a significant factor to our health, particularly children. And I'm concerned that it wasn't included. And I really think that the City Council should demand that Mead and Hunt do a study on that, included in the AMPAC report that's going to be provided. It may need to take additional funding, but it's really surprising that was left out.
8.5 minutes, Bob.
Okay, I'm done.
Okay. Thanks, Bob. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Mark, next.
I don't see any other hands up.
I would like to speak, and I apologize, but for whatever reason, Zoom and my camera aren't connecting tonight. This is Jeanette Wheat. And I'm looking ahead to the public hearing for the City of Middleton's comprehensive plan. In an electronic version of this City of Middleton Comprehensive Plan 2020, on page 6, titled The Plan, it states, Middleton will preserve, protect, and enhance our unparalleled connections to nature, agriculture, and water resources. And we will continue to lead with a community-wide stewardship ethic that equitably mitigates climate change and adapts to our changing environment. I find this statement in direct conflict with plans to expand the Middleton City Airport, in particular with continuing use of leaded AV gas being spewed all over the land and water in this area by planes that come and go and train at this airport. This plan also makes statements about being the good neighbor city and the good neighbor airport. I don't think this is being a good neighbor. and plans to expand the airport are again in direct conflict with these statements. Additionally, the push to create a commercial airport a mere 10 miles away from Dane County Regional Airport is totally inappropriate. And should this come to pass, the recreational pilots here are likely to find themselves low on the list of priorities compared to commercial pilots. The number of hangars and planes at C-29 has already expanded from 39 in 2004 to 100 in 2019. The city's master planning consultant expects that number to grow to 125 by 2039, with fully 93% still being piston-type planes, the type that uses or can use AV gas, usually does use AV gas. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Mark?
John, I just want to confirm, Kevin Munson, are you present now? Because I saw Kevin is listed as present on the screen. I just wanted to see if that was Kevin Munson.
No,
All right, next.
Mark,
Next is Steve Ziegler.
thank you, Mark. Thank you very much. The idea of omitting the air pollutants in the environmental assessment that the committee is undertaking at this point is astronomically unacceptable. The key thing here is that air pollutants and lead and all of that kind of stuff is a huge impact on the community. And Mark, I think as your responsibility as a civic planner and our leader in the city of Middleton, you need to make sure that these requirements are included in any kind of environmental assessment that is moving forward. Thank you.
Mr. Ziegler. Mark, back to you.
Once again, I don't see any hands. Is there anybody else who wishes to address the committee, the commission?
Okay. Hearing none, let's go ahead and move on to the next agenda item, which would be the approval of the minutes from January 7th, 2021. I'll give everybody a couple of minutes to peruse the minutes and let somebody make a motion.
John, this is Luke. I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, Luke has made a motion to approve. Do I hear a second?
Ray.
Okay, Ray seconded it, so we have a first and a second. Is there any additional discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, I'll go ahead and call a vote. All in favor of accepting the minutes, please say aye.
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 Okay.
Aye.
Okay, the minutes has been approved. Thank you.
And that was, I'm recording that as 6-0 because I don't believe Kevin Munson is present. Kevin, is that, I'll just assume he's not present unless he speaks up.
Just for clarification, is there anybody that voted nay on the acceptance? Okay. I know because we had kind of a delay there. All right. With that, we'll move on to the next item, the chairperson's report. So there are a couple of things we finally got done. Seems like at the end of the year, COVID and elections and everything else kind of put a wrench in the system, but the system finally came through for us. We got the new snow removal equipment. It was delivered last Friday. It took a little finagling. We had to go to the chair or the head of the central region or the Great Lakes region to get that approval, and we had that done. We also have the state's approval on the runway lighting. That's signed. We have a meeting tomorrow, the 5th, with Rich and I will attend to do a startup meeting and get the engineering going. And then we also have a meeting on the 23rd, with a sponsors meeting with the Bureau of Aeronautics. And I'll be there, and I know Bill Burns, the CFO for the city, will be there. And
I'll be involved too.
And you're going to be there too, Mark?
Yeah.
And so we're going to reconcile. I've already reconciled the finances, but we're going to reconcile the finances. And then just as a note, the city has explored a couple of concepts, and Rich Morey has requested a 10-year renewal extension. The airport is airport manager management agreement, and where the city is actually working through the details on that. And if that comes to pass, then the airport commission will get a chance to review the draft. We'll make comment on the draft, and then it will go to legal for final drafting, and then move on to the common council. So that's 4 things that we're working on. And I'll go into more detail when we get down to finances on where we're at with the Bureau and the other items. Any questions about any of that I can answer for anyone? Okay, hearing none, I would like to move on to airport manager's report. Rich?
Okay, John. You've got it in front of you. We didn't have much flying in in January because of the weather. So less noise complaints. Again, a great deal from one individual, one from 3, and then the remaining 7 were single or individual reports. Again, for the best I can determine, most, but not all of these complaints were aircraft following the noise abatement procedure for the various runways. There were a couple of aircraft that turned out as they would in a, they followed the normal procedure that you would at an airport versus the voluntary noise abatement procedure. And that, of course, results in a full power aircraft flying lower over houses that normally don't see such things. I'm disturbed by, we have one individual, he's called twice. He's also called the Wanakee Airport, complaining about people. And as you can see, if it isn't completely fabricated, it's incredibly exaggerated, at least in the incident listed here, unless for some reason he got the wrong airplane registration, but he was very specific about it being one of our trainers. I spoke with the FA about it. They're familiar with the individual. I tried to get a hold of him to engage him, and he did not return my phone call. Again, city online reporting form was used 15 times, phone 4 times, and city email 5 times. No accidents, incidents on the field. Had 1 safety seminar in January. Our online ground school, again, has concluded. We'll start up March 2nd. Airport maintenance, things have changed. The Sperry New Holland was returned from the shop yesterday. It has been tested. It will be used tomorrow for snow removal. Again, the new snow removal Caterpillar tractor was indeed delivered on the 29th. It's already been used to good effect. We're going to be using it again tomorrow. Basically that's just it. We're my grounds guy, Greg, is pleased as all get out. That Caterpillar is exceedingly easy to operate. Even I can run it. And so I think everything works out quite well. We're very happy about this as opposed to waiting until the end of February. My hat is off to John, who got to the bottom of why this was being delayed and was able to work with people and get the equipment here in a timely manner. And any questions about anything I brought up?
This is Robert. So you have both the New Holland and the Cat both moving snow tomorrow, huh?
We're somewhat limited in qualified drivers, so it'll probably be one at a time. But yeah, we should be able to do much better work. We were working with pickup truck, the smaller tractor, and then the bigger plows. The big plows work well on the runway and the main taxiway, but are not good at moving snow straight ahead. With the amount that we're forecast to get, this is going to make our cleanup a lot easier. And you'll be seeing a reduction in the hours of operation now that we have this squared away.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Rich.
Yeah.
No questions. Next one we're going to move on to is the Airport Master Plan Advisory Committee. Robert, you're going to provide us an update as to what went on, any discussions, decisions that are notable?
Yeah, definitely. So our last meeting was January 14th, a little less than a month ago. The focus of the meeting was to focus on Chapter 4, environmental settings of the draft master plan, and to begin the review of the draft alternatives, which is kind of the variety of options that AMPAC will really be looking at. One option, of course, is change nothing, but other options are what to do with the main east-west runway, if anything, what to do with the north-south grass runway, if anything, and what to do with the hangar situation, and then anything else. As was brought up by some speakers tonight as well, there was some discussion of a deeper dive on environmental settings than what is required. And I do believe that Mead and Hunt might be trying to do a little bit more with that. But any real in-depth, I think they're called EISs, environmental impact studies, those would be done at the time that somebody says, hey, let's actually change something. Let's have a project, because for the environmental impact study to work, you kind of have to compare what you have now versus what you will have after the project's over. And we don't have a project. So some of the detailed environmental study can't really be done, but I do believe Mead and Hunt is trying to do a little bit more with environmental issues to to address some of the concerns that were brought up at past AMPAC meetings. So as I reviewed my notes, the decisions made, which were just kind of more consensus at this point, not a definitive decisions, is that the 1028 main runway, the east-west runway, probably should not be changed at this time. It's really, we were talking about taking a 4,000-foot runway and maybe adding 200 feet to it, and the cost of shutting down the whole runway and adding 200 feet to it is really just not worth it. So that one, the general consensus seems to be don't really change that right now. There was direction from the members that Mead and Hunt further develop alternatives to the 119 north-south grass runway. One of the features would be to maybe move it further to the north because right now part of the runway protection zone extends over Airport Road, and so there's some interest in at least pursuing what it might look like if the that north-south runway were moved a little further north, so that the runway protection zone is not over the Airport Road, or at least not as much over it. And then there was also direction for Mead and Hunt to explore some possible locations for airplane hangars, which is one of the things that they had looked at multiple options. And so they're going to be presenting all of this again to us at the next AMPAC meeting in February, and we'll have more decisions then. And then that's February 18th. And then the other big thing that will be part of February 18th will be to firm up plans for a public open house, which is where we get Now that we have kind of a draft master plan, we can get a little bit more feedback from the public as to the current draft version of this master plan, and that public input can then feed into our decision making on AMPAC as we make our final recommendations sometime later this year.
So your plans are to have one more meeting then after the open house and try to tie it up?
I believe so. It's probably one more. I leave it up to AMPAC to decide if we need one or two more, but right now we're scheduled for probably one more after the open house.
Okay, good. When they do the environmental impact specifically on air, it would be, I think, useful, if you had multiple points around the city and township as opposed to just one on the airport. That way you at least have some comparison. Is it more here, over there? So, you could get kind of a map, if you will, of some of the heavy metals around the area to determine if there's really what the impact is.
I think that's a good suggestion. I think it's outside of the scope of what
It is.
AMPAC will do for the master plan, but if there is any type of project recommended to move forward, I would hope that an environmental impact study would take kind of that broader look at the area.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Robert, this is Mark. I can confirm that Beat and Hunt, subsequent to the last AMPAC meeting, I've been working with them to add a page or so to the environmental settings chapter to address the air quality issues that came up at the meeting. Well, I don't know if it will address it to everyone's satisfaction. It won't be as detailed as some would like, but they will at least, we will be presenting to the AMPAC committee in 2 weeks some additional language for the AMPAC members to decide whether to include that in the packet. I mean, in the chapter, the environmental settings chapter. So that is in progress and will be released here very, very soon.
Great.
Okay. Thank you for that confirmation, Mark.
Yep. And Rich, I know, wants to say something too.
Rich, go ahead.
Here we go. Yeah, John, just for practical or common sense, we quite literally have tens of thousands of cars that drive by the airport, 10,000 a day, I believe, by town chair mentioned on Airport Road alone, the Beltline, all of which are emitting to a certain extent carbon monoxide, nitrous oxide, other hydrocarbons, which are all, and some carcinogens. Yet we have 100 aircraft based at Charlie 29, Middleton Municipal Maury, of which maybe 10 would be in the pattern, at most 10 in the air up and flying at one time in this area, probably closer to, on average, 2 or 3. So I can understand why the FAA and the BOA might be following their lead, might think, look at this, and really aviation contribution, the only, is essentially insignificant, with the exception, I have to admit, there is some lead that is put out. But again, it's an exceedingly small amount. So to give people that were asking why this isn't part and parcel of the original, I think that's the answer right there, is that just relatively speaking, it is such a small amount as to be insignificant.
That was my comment, basically. How do you say if something is high or low unless you have other data to compare it to? An example is maybe on Route 12, outside of town might be one, maybe Mineral Point, that might be another. So you pick areas so you have some kind of a comparison, a fair comparison, right? And then, to me, that makes sense, because if you only have 1 point, how can you say something's high, low, or anything else? You have to have multiple points. So anyway, enough of that. Does anybody have any questions for Robert? Okay, hearing none, I'd like to move on to the next section. So these are kind of a little bit out of order, and I apologize for that. Last night or the night before, the BOA dumped a lot of the BOA financial forms on me. And if you've ever tried to follow an audit trail, it's usually pretty straightforward. A governmental audit trail requires a secret decoder ring, which was not included in the packet. So I did my best, and then I called to make sure that my assumptions were correct. So let me kind of go through the different pieces first, and then I'll show you where it plays on our projection going forward. Okay? So we had an AIP, an Airport Improvement Program 09, which was the stream bank and the hangar improvement. These go back to like 2018, 2017. That's been paid and closed, with the exception of we owe the BOA 41 cents.
John, where would you like me to have the screen?
You can do the comparative analysis. I think that's probably as easy as any. There you go. That one right there. So that's that.
Oops.
And we also built this snow removal equipment building that they keep the stuff in. And it costs, it's like $900,000 for a metal building. On a square foot basis, you could buy the nicest home in Maple Bluff. We actually overpaid for that, and they will be writing us a check back for $137,822.70. So if you can see that on the budget on 12/31, that's that line item there. Okay, so I showed it on our budget. I added it and updated it. That will be income to the airport. Okay, great. That closes out AIP 10. AIP 11 is the CARES Act. We originally were given $69,000. We've used $58,266.73, leaving us a balance to use in this period of $10,733.27. And that number is below right there. So I included that. That'll be income this year. If anybody has any question about any of this, I'll try to go through it pretty slow. AIP 13 is the new runway lights. Excuse me, let me go back. AIP 12 is the new snow removal equipment. We still owe, they haven't done their accounting, $3,833.33. It's not on this sheet because it's already been removed from our entitlements. And I'll tell you what the entitlement balance is. So basically we're square on the SRE. AIP 13 is the new runway lights. This is actually broken down into 3 categories. The first of it was engineering, which is $68,167, and that is paid through airport entitlements. That amount has already been removed from our entitlement account and is contemplated at our current balance. So that's been paid. The physical runway lights are $260,000, and it's paid by apportionment. And the way that works is as the BOA pays invoices for it, we get invoiced 5%, and then we have to write them a check. So 5% of the 260,000, if you go down the bottom, capital outlay apportionments, I show an expense of 13,000. There you go, right there, Mark. Okay, so that's the 13,000. The nav aids are 180,000, and they are paid through airport entitlements. Nothing has been paid yet, and it's not contemplated in the beginning balance, which I'll give you in a minute. AIP 14 is the master plan and ALP update. And from you city folks know this better than I do. From my understanding, the city allocated money within the city's budget to pay for that. And originally it was 250,000, of which you would pay 20%. That was then converted into an apportionment deal of 95 and 5, so the city would now pay 5%. And then there were additional unused block grants that were unused from other airports that were funneled into the project to help pay the bill. I don't know what the balance of that is, and I haven't showed it on this spreadsheet because it's in the city's books and it's not in our books. Okay.
Originally, the city's match for the master plan was going to be from TIF funding. That was
Mhm.
going to be our local match.
Okay. So it's been greatly reduced because the nature has changed from 80-20. So instead of 20%, now it's 5%. And then other money had came in from block grants unused. So that was whittled down. So that brings me to the current balance of our entitlement account. Our entitlement funds, after we've taken out stream bank, the snow removal equipment, the engineering for the rental lights, all the things that I've discussed, we have a balance of $46,660. In the second to third quarter of this year, we'll receive another $150,000 for a balance of $196,666. And that will more than cover the NAV aids. So we're basically have all the funds that we need for all the projects that we have going. And it's nice we've got some surplus. We got the 137,000 back and we've got 10,000. There was discussion that there will be another round of CARES program. And there could be some more unused block grant money that we could get to come our way. So we know that we will. So for all practical purposes, we have $196,666 in entitlements. Okay. So let's go back to now the comparative analysis. Luke asked last session. Now you have all the supporting materials because you have the month by month and everything else. But let's just stick with this one because it's easy. So this was the budget and the year to date for 19, 20, and 21. So as you go through here, you can see that some of the things that we never counted on in 19 was we had $111,808 that was overpaid to the BOA. They refunded to us in the form of a check. Our cash balances are given to the city and they are invested. And so we have $6,041 for the income in 19. We don't know what that number is yet for 20, but it'll be something. If you go down, most of these things are fairly nominal. The two busts that I have in 19 is one is the we're 12,000. We were 12,000 over, 13,000 over on utilities, and that number actually came from the city. I don't know at the time. Maybe we didn't record it right. I can't tell you that. And then under airport grounds major maintenance, there was a bust of 21,000. That was the hydraulic pumps that went out on this snow removal equipment that we're still trying to deal with today. Okay, so all in all, if you take a look at the net change, we predicted that we would have a net change of $1,470, and our actual was $90,670 for a variance of $89,000. So we come out far ahead. A lot of this is due to the extra money we paid historically. So we're keeping a good eye on that. So that takes us to 20. So 20, if we go through it, we have some variances. We had the wrong budget amount in the hangar land leases. That's why we had an excess of $9,651. Again, we didn't anticipate it, but we had the CARES grant. We spent $58,000 of that. And we had some more BOA refunds of $94,000. So we anticipated $136,000. We had $304,000. So we were to the good $168,000. As you go down through the rest, the only big bust that I could see was on the $13,000 for the utility. So that's where that one was. So let's go over to our budget then for where we're at today. So so I'm curious that I'm not so sure that a hangar lease shouldn't be $118,000 if that's what it was last year. So that may be an error that we need to correct. I'm pretty good with the rest of the numbers. We've included then what we think we're going to get back or know we're going to get back in cash, and also CARES program. It could be more. As we go down, the only other number I see that could be adjusted is the 25,000 for the utilities. It's been 31,000 roughly for 2 years. Why it wouldn't be $31,000 again this year? I wouldn't know. I don't think MG&E is going to give us a discount. And outside services, by the way, last year was a lot higher, which is basically legal, was $7,378, and that was primarily due to open information requests and work that was done for AMPAC. So if everything comes true to full, which I think we should be fairly close, our ending balance at the end of this year would be $623,523. So we're doing a good job keeping track of the people's money, and we're making sure that, you know, we get everything entitled to us from the Bureau of Aeronautics and the FAA.
Rich has his hand up, John.
Hey, Rich.
Yeah, just one question, John, and this is outstanding, the way you put things together, but there's one project that wasn't mentioned, and that was we did the crack fill on the runway. We still have the crack fill to go on the main taxiway.
Yes.
So, yep.
So-
And I know you're aware of it. I just didn't hear it mentioned here. So
Well, so this is where we're at financially, right? And so we'll have to determine, we only have enough money in entitlements to pay for the runway, the nav aids. So we really don't have the money to pay for it in this period, unless we decide, or the airport commission decide, to do it out of our financial, just out of our cash, or we can seek another apportionment, although I don't know if that'll fly. But
and you said nav aids, I'm assuming that's the PAPI lights and the runway and identifier lights.
that's right. They can't be included in the 95.5 project for some reason. That's their rules.
Okay.
Right. So the engineering has to be paid for out of entitlements, and the nav aids have to be paid for out of entitlements, and the 260,000, which is the actual construction, that can be paid out of apportionment. The VOA rules are they're a mystery to me, and I just, I listen to what people tell me and record it.
Understood. Okay.
Yeah. If we can get past this next month and some of these issues that we're dealing with, we really need to sit down and say, okay, do we want to keep these cash balances for things that we might want to do in the future? Or can we push the taxiway ceiling off another year? And again, your input on that as airport manager is extremely critical in those decisions. I mean, I've seen it. I know it needs to be done. I just have to try to figure out, if we don't do it, what's the negative impact? And if we really need to do it, how do we fund it? I'm willing to work the machinery and try to figure out where the money's at, find a pocket. But that's the reality of our situation.
Very good, John. We'll talk about it later. Okay.
All right. I mean, we've made a lot of progress here. We got the runway lights done, cash in the bank. We got a new snow removal equipment. It's coming together.
Oh, absolutely.
It's next on the list. Okay.
Okay. Very good.
Great. So let's go to the next one, Mark, which is more airplane company. So the numbers that I showed you above, I think, are a little bit confusing to me, because we have a line for airport manager, and we have a line for, let me look here, and we got a line for grounds maintenance, and we got, landing light maintenance. And so we've got money that should be in other categories that's bundled into the airport manager's agreement, because the airport manager provides the labor and the people to do with it. So as example, let's take runway lights. Runway lights, the actual light materials is in the landing light maintenance, but the labor is in is in the airport manager's contract. And then we've got, so the mowing and the brush and the snow removal, that's really airport grounds maintenance. But it's in airport managers. So I just wanted you to be aware that when you look at one of these line items, I'm trying to talk to Bill about moving things around so they're more easily understood and they're visible to all of our citizens so they can understand, how much things really cost. And it isn't like, Rich is getting a salary of the airport manager's contract, because that's not true. In 2020, he got $4,500. Basically he bills for the time that he serves in that role. All right.
And Bill, for people who don't know, is our finance director.
Beg your pardon?
I'm just saying who Bill is. Bill Burns, our finance director.
Bill Burns, right?
And John, I've been wanting this relabeled for years. It's not, it's airport management is what it is, or airport labor, not a manager's contract. I'm certainly not a city employee. So in this, anyway.
Well, I've recommended to administration that they might want to relabel the contract. Instead of airport managers agreement, it's an airport managers and management agreement. And that with Bill Burns, talk to him about reallocating these dollars into the proper areas. It's fairly easily done. And it doesn't impact roll up. And one of the things the city has to deal with is when they start folding the golf course and the airport and all these things together, all of the chart of accounts align themselves so they can roll up to a citywide view. And so I don't think anything we're talking about here would impact the ability to do that. So I'll continue to work on that. I sense a lot of willingness to try to represent things the way they really are for the community. So that's that. So anyway, is there any questions about any of this that I went through so far that I could try to answer for you? I know it's a little complicated. Source documents are even worse. We were going to put them in the packet, but we spared you the misery.
Hi, John. I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, David.
Being the new guy. So airport manager, really, the time Rich puts in for logging complaints, kind of all the intake he does, following up on meetings, requests, all the kind of stuff that goes on. He's really essentially volunteering his time, basically. And the only time he's really getting paid to do something if he picks up a lawnmower and cuts the grass.
Well, that's not totally true, David.
Oh, okay.
So Rich can book his time for dealing with noise complaints or other things. However, I don't believe he's really booking all of his time. So there probably is a donation factor here.
Okay.
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 That's what airport manager is. Am I correct? Have I portrayed it correctly, Rich?
I believe you have, John. You can see the jump between 2018, 2019, 2020 are fairly consistent. And that is the increase really in dealing with the public, overflight and noise complaints as things have spooled up. So that, I do keep track of my time, but I'm not marking it up like I would any other professional service. We do everything here at the best we can figure the cost to the city and pass it on. We don't mark it up. So,
well, then I would like to thank you for the enormous amount of time you put into it, because it seems like you're putting a lot of time into everything, and we're getting a deal for your expertise and your service. Thank you.
And hence the willingness to do a 10-year extension.
Well, maybe he's a glutton for punishment.
True, but it is my life and I enjoy it, so mostly.
Well, thank you very much. I really I really enormously appreciate it. It's an enormous amount of time and commitment. So thank you.
Great.
Welcome.
Thanks for your comments. Is any of the other commissioners have any questions about any of this or any comments you'd like to make before we move on?
I would just echo what Rich's statement earlier, John, that this is, thank you so much for putting this together and making it, presenting it in a way that's easy to understand.
Okay, well, hopefully, we've got a foundation now. We'll just add the years to it, and then we can do a year in review. And thank you. It's I actually enjoy doing it too. If I didn't, I'd just be out plowing snow. So I actually have something to do with my brain. This is good. All right. With that, let's kind of move on, Rich or Mark, to the next topic, please. All right, and I believe this is yours.
There, I'm unmuted. So actually, I didn't even look at the agenda. I assume we're on the obstructions. Is that the one we're on?
Yeah, I think so. Mitigation of airway, airport obstructions and obstacles.
So we have west of the airport, a tree that was identified a year ago by the FAA, almost a year ago, as encroaching an oak tree, a stately oak tree, that's roughly in this location. Within a blue triangle that is a navigation easement that was obtained by the city back in when we reconstructed the airport.
Mm-hmm.
So that tree was identified last as one of the 8 you'll recall that we've talked about previously. And the tree looks like this over here. I took this picture last year.
Okay.
So I have reached out to the property owners, and you heard from David earlier, David and Susan.
Yes.
They are chagrined, to say the least, by the city wanting to prune the tree again. It was done, as I mentioned, when the city reconstructed the airport. That's when we obtained the easement, and it was actually pruned around that time, as I understand. And so we I've been conferring with them. I also talked with the Bureau of Aeronautics about this. Obviously, we all want to see. We don't want to see a forester, a tree expert, come in and do a disservice to the tree. We would want it to be pruned in a way that retains its grandeur. It's to keep it looking natural. And that I've reached out to a contractor who initially fell through, and now I have another one that is going to meet me out there. I've invited Dave and Susan to join me in a couple weeks when that meeting happens. That's my report on that one. You heard from them earlier with concerns and wanting to make sure that we're sensitive to that, and of course that's what we intend to be. There's also a tree north of the airport on the RIP property, a couple trees there, which we have an agreement with Jim RIP, as we mentioned earlier, at the last meeting and previously. And so I plan to have this contractor be the same one that does both trees. And that's all the encroachments that we have to deal with at this point in time. The other one on the Bletner property was removed with his consent, and that was south of the airport. And then the 5 on that were identified on Highwood Circle, those will no longer be an obstruction, identified as obstructions, when the VOR approach is decommissioned this summer, in August, I believe. So that's my report.
Okay, so first of all, we are using certified arborists, professionals to do the job. Correct?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to use. We're using a certified tree specialist.
Okay, so somebody, and they know when the tree shouldn't be.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, the firm that I've reached out to and made the appointment with is actually under contract with the city already to do some tree trimming elsewhere in the city.
Great.
They've been working in Middleton Hills lately. So this is the time of year to prune oak trees when not in the growing season.
Great. And the Bureau of Aeronautics, There is no such thing as
a variance. So
there's
thank
no
you for
variance. Yeah, I mean,
bringing that up.
we have to fulfill our obligation.
Yeah, the Arndts did ask that, and I thank you for bringing that up. I was going to mention that. They did ask if there was a way to not, is there a way to get permission not to prune it, not to trim the tree? And I did ask that question to the Bureau. What would happen is we would likely see the FAA require the city to have a displaced threshold. It would change the vertical approach. And that would, for the landings coming from the west, landing to the east, and aircraft would then be advised or directed to land later on the runway, so that they have a higher clearance over the tree, and so that would then effectively reduce the runway length.
And then regarding Cynthia's comment of our confidence that the tree is actually within the navigation easement, I mean, what is our kind of degree of confidence for that? I guess if we trimmed it before, it was agreed it was in the easement before.
I would agree with that assessment, and I went out and looked for property lines with one of our engineering techs last year.
Okay.
It is very close to the property line that's shared with Mr. Meinholz, Father Meinholz to the north. I did leave a message for John to let him know that this work would be coming as well.
Right. So we've kind of touched our bases. We verified that it's within navigation easement. We do have a qualified, certified person to trim it. And we have explored the possibility of getting some kind of a buy, but we're not going to get that. So we're really down to where we just have to do the work and work with the resident to make sure the work is done in a quality fashion.
That's correct.
Okay.
It's possible, depending on what the cost estimate is, it's possible I might need to get additional quotes, but I want to make sure that we get this taken care of this winter still before the growing season starts.
Yeah, I know I sent you some arborists and Rich sent you some arborists. So, I mean, you've got a pocket full of people that are certified climbers that can do that stuff. Okay, great. Does anybody have any questions of Mark?
I mean, it's a shame that this is a beautiful tree. All trees are beautiful, obviously, and it's unfortunate, but I think we can do this in a professional way, looking at how some other trees have been pruned, including in my neighborhood.
Okay.
I know arborists. A good arborist knows what he or she is doing.
Well, I mean, the purpose of the navigation easement is exactly what it's for. It's to keep the airways clear. So, it is what it is. Moving on to the next one, we were talking about changes to the noise complete map and online reporting system. I think that's Rob, you and Mark. So I'm going to turn it back over to you folks.
Sure. Yeah, let's start off with the aircraft noise reporting form. This is designed to be basically the same form that we've been using now for a year or more now, but simplified. The form before had a place for people to put their full, their home address. This is really trying to focus on what do we need for accurately identifying the location, the time, and the date of where a plane is spotted that is, of noise concern. And so it really just goes right into what's the date, what's the time, where are you located. We even try to speed that up a little bit rather than asking all the, specifically street address, city, trying to get, name, city, address, zip code. We're trying to at least limit it to a little bit like, if you're hearing a plane, you're probably in the city of Middleton, the town of Middleton, or the town of Springfield. So we just have a checkbox, so that speeds that up. If you are, in fact, outside of those three areas, there is an other box. And then you put in the street address where you are when you hear the plane, because it doesn't matter where you live. But if you're at a friend's house and that's where you hear a noisy airplane, that's the address you use, not your own personal address. It's the location where the noise is, and then a zip code, and that helps us, again, identify, especially if the person ticks the other box. The zip code will help us tie that street address to a specific area. Aircraft direction of travel, that's ideally given, but that's it's not, if people don't have it, they don't have it. And then I know one of the speakers today said, well, where do we put all this other information? And that's where details of aircraft and associated noise would go. If you have details like measured noise readings, you can put it here. This is kind of the free form box, we're not asking for anything specific here. It's just like the information that you choose to provide. And then it goes on to say, you do have to tell us, is your complaint based on noise, vibration, low flying aircraft, or frequency? We kind of need to know that. And then everything else is pretty much, if you have the information, please provide it. So things like, is it a recreational plane, a cargo plane, air carrier, or helicopter, aircraft color? None of this is required, but it's everything that you can provide with specificity helps us do our due diligence to try to, if there is something that we can talk to a particular pilot or track it back to a specific plane, that's what all of this information is here to give us. And then including, if you have a photograph of the aircraft that's on the next page, you can attach that to the form. And then it asks at the very end, do you want somebody to contact you on this? Because some people don't want to be contacted, but other people would probably be pretty mad if they sent all this information in and didn't hear from anybody. So we wanted to give them a place to say specifically, do you want to be contacted or not? And if the answer is yes, please give us your preferred contact method, email or telephone, and a spot for that information. So I think this form is easier to use than the previous form, but certainly I would welcome, comments from the airport commission on that. And if obviously we'll have, if we implement this and people are still having a difficult time using the form, we're changing it now, we can change it again in the future. The only other thing I guess I'd point out at the very top of this page, or sorry, top of the document, so going back up to the very first page, I did try to put some information that we did not have there in the past, and that is just to give a little guidelines for the person filling it out. Why are we asking for this? FAA kind of requires one aircraft, one report, so that's why we're asking for that. We're asking for people to prioritize noise levels. If we get hit with 100 noise reports, it's going to be a lot harder to follow up on 100 than the top 4. So where possible, we ask people to prioritize. Timeliness, again, if we get this information a month after the fact, there's not a lot that we can do to track back to a specific pilot at a specific time and have them remember what happened 30 days earlier. So if we ask the people turn this in quickly, and then required information, that's just a reminder that some of the information here is required, some is not. If you can at all possibly fill in the required information, because that's kind of the information that we would need, if anything was going to float up to like being reported to the FAA, there's certain minimum pieces of information we need there. So they're listed here, what's required and what's not required. So that's my summary. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, Robert, this is Luke. A couple things. So, and you may have covered this earlier, but I know one of the questions, and one of the things that Mark looked into was making the form anonymous without having to utilize the Civic Plus component. Do you want to talk about that?
Thank you. Right now, the answer is people can turn in this form, because that is one of the options, is you download this form and print it out. And then they're not having to log into Civic Plus at all. But I did ask, and there's still the people who run the city's this portion of the website, the Civic Plus people, it's an outside corporation. We're being told that they just don't have an option for us to have a anonymous login to the city's website. So for that, if somebody really has a problem with logging into the city's system, it's too complex, or they want to remain anonymous, the way to handle that would have to be to print out this downloadable form as opposed to filling it all out online and then submitting it to the airport. You could have somebody else email it to the airport, I suppose, or you could drop it off at the airport and not identify yourself. But that's the way to submit this without having a Civic Plus login.
And the other one around, it sounded like there was a question around whether or not the picture was required. And if I'm reading the form correctly, it is not required. Is that right? You can submit it without a picture?
That is correct. The picture is helpful in terms of helping us positively identify a plane. But as I think another commenter earlier tonight said, you might not have your camera with you. It's not a requirement. It's a like to have, but it's not a requirement.
The FAA is very, very particular on supporting information.
I agree.
And all these things that you're talking about attaching, they will throw away. Because how do they know that picture is of the plane that they're complaining about, right? Right. And so, I mean, even I've been through this before, even if you had a videotape of somebody doing something on the field they shouldn't do, they didn't see it. So I don't want to give anybody the illusion that you're going to attach all this stuff and it's going to be taken forward, because it won't. They will strip it all out and they will throw it away. And that's just the FAA's, they rely on their own investigation.
Certainly, John. And I guess that's a good point that to bring me back to the public, which is most of the time what we find is, when we have the information and we have it in a timely fashion, what we find is that the pilot who's flying the plane more often than not actually is doing everything allowable.
Right.
There's, as I think Rich mentioned, there are some times where pilots did what's allowable, but didn't follow the voluntary noise abatement program. And those people can at least be addressed and said, we can tell them, hey, we'd really ask you to do this. But even there, it's not like the FAA is going to get involved, because there's been no action that they would find objectionable. We need this information though at the airport level, if we have to try to up our game. And that's what we're trying to do here is figure out ways to respond to noise complaints and try to make improvements where, for the worst noise offenders, we're trying to focus on those issues so that we can make a net difference in the noise levels in and around the airport. So, yeah, but thank you for your comments.
Yeah, one of the biggest benefits, I think, is allowing Mark and the city to plot these. So we have a sense of, the location, and so that we can look for patterns and, and say, okay, what does this make sense? And, that's why we've added runway, 119 to it. And so you can see that one now and get a sense for where these patterns go.
Right.
And what I was going to say, John, is when we get requests, they come through like this in an email, and Rich, I get copied on them, and Rich is the one who acts on them and makes sure they're in the database, et cetera, and then responds. But they look like this, and I'm just only showing a part of it that's not identifying to anybody. But this one just came in, and it shows you how the fields that are filled out get populated. And how the aircraft, in this case, there was an N number.
Okay.
So they come in, and then that spreadsheet that Rich, his staff maintains, I worked with my colleague Daphne, who is our mapping expert, and she took the addresses and the sources when they were provided, they weren't always provided, and created this map.
Yeah, I think that's a good exercise to do maybe on a quarterly basis. I don't think we have to do it every time, but maybe on a quarterly basis, we could take a look. And, maybe two maps, one that's kind of year to date, and the other one is just for the quarter. And then we could just kind of see how this thing is playing out. And if they make sense, I think this is kind of a, we put it in our cooker and see if is there something here that's meaningful and how would you make a change? And, we've tried we've been trial and error on noise abatement procedures and everything else. And I think we need a more scientific method before we make changes. It doesn't make any sense. So that's my comment.
And
Anybody else have any comments they'd like
I
to
just
make?
want to reiterate something that Robert said too, which is, or alluded to, which is, this is an attempt to improve the process.
Yes.
Over time, if we recognize that there's further tweaks that need to be made, we are more than happy to do so.
Yes.
This is by no means the final decision that will exist into perpetuity, no matter what.
It's only a point in time. Continual process improvement. I'm all for it. Okay. All right, thank you. So we have no questions on any of the agenda materials. I would like to talk a little bit about future events and agenda items. I did get a request for simplified, and I don't know how this all works out yet, a simplified event approval process for events that stay within the confines of the airport and have no impact. An example of that might be somebody wants to have a hangar party, right? It's kept within the confines of the airport. Parking's not on the street. Okay, do we really need to go get downtown and get 15 certificates for it? So I think it's worth discussing. The city has its processes, and we certainly don't want to upset anybody, but we should talk about, is there something we want to request that where we have control over certain events if they don't spill out beyond the airport and they don't impact the surrounding community? So I'd like to put that on for the next period. Does anybody else have any kind of an agenda item that they'd like to have? I think we're getting there. I mean, it's pretty buttoned down. We got our money lined up. We got big cash balances. We're moving in the right way. Our airport's getting fixed. We got our processes down. I think we're doing a good job. You guys are all doing a great job. That's all I can say. So I really appreciate that. So I'm going to make a note here on the the approval of events that don't spill out. And if anybody has anything that they feel it's important, just send Mark an email or me an email, and we'll make sure that we try to get everything on the agenda. And so with that, would anybody like to make a motion for adjournment? Or do you guys want to just sit here and look at each other for a while?
I'll motion to adjourn.
All right, Dave. We have a motion to adjourn. Have a second.
This is Robert. I would second.
We have a first and a second. Is there any additional discussion? Hearing none, I'd like to call a vote. All in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same side. Okay, the motion carries, and the February meeting of the Airport Commission is officially concluded. Thank you, everybody.